Murrumbidgee Hall. It's a heritage listed building built in 1869. This hall served the community as the local school, as a multi-denominational church, and also as a public hall for almost over 100 years, and still serves the community for meetings up until this day. It had its 150th anniversary last year, and this is a perfect place to introduce the next segment of our history project, which is interviews with 3 local residents who have links back to the original settlers in the basin. Today we're here with our 3rd local hero interview. Today we're talking with Brian Rae. The Raes go back to original settlement in the basin. Brian is a bit of a history buff, so he'll be able to tell us a lot of things that we don't know. To start with, Brian, because I know there's a division in the community, are we in Murrumbidgee or in Bowman's Forest?
Well, technically, Roy, you are in Bowman's Forest. There always has been a unwritten law that the road from the crossroads across through Neary Lane and to the Rowley, that was the dividing line. East was Murrumbidgee, west was Bowman's Forest. And that has been a general thumb rule from generations.
But you're on the east side of the basin.
Yeah, I know, and I've always considered myself Murrumbidgee. However, a few years ago, when the male numbers were altered,
Right.
they decided that we here were Bowman's Forest.
Huh? Is there a different postcode from Bowman's Forest to Murrumbidgee?
Yes.
Is there?
They decided that this little section along the main road to that lane down there and back down to the Hall Road was Bowman's Forest, and my mail would come from Rowley and be classed as Bowman's Forest. We queried it, and they said, well, I said, look, we've been here a long time, and it's Murrumbidgee, you're wrong. But anyway, a bureaucrat in Melbourne had decided that this was Bowman's Forest, and that had already been secretly gazetted, so it wasn't worth arguing with.
Right.
So the mailman had several more kilometres to come just for me.
Oh, right.
So technically we are in Bowman's Forest,
Right.
but I still consider myself Murrumbidgee.
Well, I know if you look at Google and where they actually put in Murrumbidgee and Bowman's Forest, actually the property line, they make the line up above your property that's in Bowman's Forest, so somebody's following.
Well, anyway, that's the way we've always looked upon it. And most people would say the same thing. As a general rule of thumb, east is Murrumbidgee, west is Bowman's Forest.
Now, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but your original ancestor who came to Bowman's Forest, because it was on the western side of the basin, Alexander Rae?
That's right, yeah.
And so, what do you know about him?
He was a member of a seafaring family. Originally, our ancestors came from Kakubri, Scotland.
Oh, okay, Scotland.
And they were seamen and explorers. But they had a shipping business, merchant shipping, carting goods to India and back, and to the new colony, Australia. But they moved Liverpool, probably because I suppose it was a bigger port and more accessible to the rest of the world. And they had quite a few shipping boats. In fact, I think they had 40 more at one stage. And they were mainly involved in taking supplies to the goldfields and around to India and back. In fact, they held the record, aided by good winds and currents, from going to Liverpool, round the Cape of Good Hope, to India and back, which they coveted.
On a particular ship?
I forget the name of it, to be honest. But anyway, Alexander, my great-grandfather, was the first Rae to come to Australia. He brought supplies to the goldfields.
In Beechworth?
Well, at Botany Bay,
Right.
where they landed.
Right.
But strangely, he brought his wife. This was in 1857.
All right.
He brought his wife, which was a bit strange. And when they got to Botany Bay, the crew jumped ship to go to the goldfields. And we don't know what happened to the ship, but he remained, and he found his way to the 3 Mile goldfields.
Did he? So he deliberately came for gold.
Maybe, but he was captain the ship
Right.
that brought supplies,
Right.
and they had several ships doing it. But as I say, when they got here, the crew jumped ship, so he didn't have much option but to stay. But he must have known maybe something in the back of his mind that he wanted to stay. I don't know. Strangely, he brought his wife, which I don't think they would have too much in those days. But he found his way to the goldfields, 3 Mile.
Yeah.
And, well, how successful he was, we don't know. By about 1860, he was in Bowman's Forest, and they were selecting land there a bit earlier than up here in Mamungi.
Yeah.
And he must have selected several blocks of land and started farming.
So he must have had a bit of money to be able to buy the land.
Well, I don't know. I think it was you'd know more about it than me. There were various forms of acquisition with leaseholds and goodness knows what.
The early days, you actually had to buy at an auction.
Yeah, well, anyway, he got several blocks and he was farming, which must have been pretty hard for someone with no farming experience in a pretty unforgiving land. And he had a large family, 9 children for the first wife, and his wife died, and he married again and had another 4, so he had a very large family. But he must have continued farming, and he was mainly in dairying and sheep and general mixed farming,
Yeah.
as far as we understand. He must have been being a sea captain, he was a great organiser, and he was fairly involved in the district affairs because he must have been the driving force behind the settlement of the Bowman's Forest Cemetery and the Bowman's Forest School. In fact, he helped build the Bowman's Forest School thing. So he should have with all those kids.
Yeah.
But he continued farming about 20 years. I suppose the call of the sea beckoned, and he took most of his children and his new wife to New Zealand, where he became a marine engineer and a sea captain, and he spent the rest of his life in New Zealand.
Right.
And is buried at Dunedin, the Southern Island. But he left his 3 eldest sons behind on the farm at Bowman's Forest. The 2 eldest went, after a couple of years, sold their share to John Turnbull, who was my grandfather,
Oh, yeah.
and they went to New South Wales, to Narromine,
Yeah.
where one founded Rayburn Station, and the other one was involved in clearing the land and dam sinking. He never married. But the other one, this Walter, the eldest one, still has ancestors up there.
Right.
But the one that stayed was John Turnbull, or Jack,
Right.
who's my grandfather, and he farmed there for a number of years. He married a local girl, Catherine Morrison, who was the daughter of another early settler.
Right. Was that the stonemason?
Yes,
Yeah.
a daughter of those stonemasons, Scottish stonemasons. And he farmed there and was supposed to have had a butcher shop, or butchering business of some description, which is hard to imagine in days without freezers, what have you.
I think the butcher shop was just a tree out back.
I think so. Be pretty rough. He farmed there for a number of years, and tragedy struck in 1900 when a fire came. He had 3 children at that stage. A fire came over the hill,
Yeah.
and they got the horse and dray, and his wife and kids, and drove into the dam. And they saved themselves, but when they came back, everything was razed, house and everything. So after that, a Mr. Jessup, further up in Mamungi,
Yeah.
in what's now known as the Lees Morrison Road,
Yeah.
let him live in a house there
Right.
for the time being. And later on, he bought that. And
Well, there's a whole bunch of Jessups.
yes,
Yeah.
quite a few Jessups. And he actually spent the rest of his life in that house.
Oh.
And after that, he started expanding his interests up here in the eastern
So
end.
he
of the country.
was a pretty successful farmer then.
So we're told he was,
Uh-huh.
but very hard working, very hard working. In 1904, tragedy struck again. He'd had another 3 children, but his wife died. Catherine died. Left him with 6 little kids. Now after that, his sister-in-law, Jessie Morrison, she came and lived with them and basically helped rear them.
Right.
And the youngest, Janet, who was only a few, the grandmother was only 34, but died, I think, as basically a result of childbirth,
Yeah.
which happened a lot in
Common,
or something. But the little baby, it was only a few weeks old, and she was partly reared for some time by Kellys.
Right. And
Another local
is it a
pioneer
volunteer? The Kellys volunteered to do it?
I think so. I don't know. So there's always been a fairly close connection between the Kellys and the Raes. And in fact, this where we're sitting now was Kelly land we bought off Kellys in the 60s.
Are these Kellys that are related to young Ned, or?
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think so. But they were, I'll tell you later, they were a very hard-working, highly respected family. And John Turnbull, or Jack as he was called,
Right.
he reared his family there, and he started farming more in Mamungi, and he spent as I said, he spent the rest of his life there. His and Catherine's descendants are scattered throughout the country, but the three of us, three of his grandchildren, Denise Rae, Maureen Rae, and myself,
Right.
we still in the district with our families
Right.
farming.
Yeah. It's an amazing connection. Something that occurred to me when he was here, because not too far from your boundary, there's an unusual parcel of land that's owned by a Chinese man. Where did he have Chinese employees, or?
I don't think so. That was long before, I think.
Before he came over to this side?
I'd say I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Because I know there was a lot of Chinese laborers who worked on farms here.
That was long before my time.
Right.
I think before his time too.
Yeah. So they disappeared pretty early.
I think so.
Right.
Yeah, that was long before, I think.
And one of the things I read there's a mention actually of two bands, and John Turnbull was mentioned in playing in one of these bands. Do you know anything about this?
Well, I don't, strangely, but you're telling me this, so I presume it's right, but I never heard of Daddy Jack, as he was called, being in a band, but his daughters were all musical.
Oh, yeah.
His sons weren't, but his daughters were all musical.
Well, they had to learn it somewhere, wouldn't they?
Yeah, well, Jessie, one of them, used to play the organ for the church, I know.
Oh.
No, the girls were all musical. Yeah, but no, I haven't heard that, so you're telling me something.
Well, I never found out any details.
No, well, that could well be.
It was mentioned that there was, I know there was bands, but they don't have the members of the bands, but there was one reference to John Turnbull playing an instrument.
Oh, well, that's probably right. Probably more back when he was at Bowman's Forest, I would imagine. Yeah, so I don't know.
Because there was a band in Bowman's Forest.
So I've heard, yeah. So I presume he did it, and I did hear from you, I think, that he played the violin. So.
Yeah. I don't remember now, but I just thought maybe you play any instruments, Brian?
No, I don't. I'm
Tone deaf?
yes. I'm dyslexic.
I know when Denise gave me a bunch of pictures when I did the book, and the front cover I know is a picture of your
That's
father.
my dad. Yeah.
And Denise told me that he was a noted ploughman. Is this so?
Yeah, well, that's true. Yes. He wasn't backward in telling us either. But no, he was very good horseman and very good at ploughing. In fact, he did a lot of ploughing for some of the old pioneers.
Were on contract or something?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Thompson sisters.
Mm-hmm.
He worked a lot for them,
Did
and they were hard people to work
he? So
for.
I understand.
The Jardines, different ones.
Yeah.
But of course, in those days, people took an incredible pride in what they did. And this would have been with moldboard ploughing.
Mm-hmm.
Because most modern day farmers wouldn't have seen a moldboard plough, let alone use one. And it was an incredible art, and he was very good at it.
Did they have competitions or?
Well, in recent years, there have been competitions. In fact, I've got a cousin who was very good too, so it's coming out.
Right.
Yeah, but certainly didn't come out with me.
People that can do a straight line.
Yes, but it was more than that. It had to be straight and completely turned over.
Yeah.
It was an incredible art, just setting your plough, let alone doing it. But as I say, people took incredible pride in what they did then.
And refresh my memory, moldboard, the principle behind that is when you turn it over, it actually killed the weeds.
Yes,
And so
totally
that
turned
was
over.
why it was so important to get that.
There was a shear,
Yeah.
as they called it, which was pointed, about a foot long
Yeah.
on the end, and then a long piece of curved metal, so to speak, and it turned the saw right over. But it was on modern day standards, it was very slow, and because they didn't have the sprays, and I mean agriculture's changed so much nowadays. And he did it with the horses, and then when the tractors came in, but you're still very good with the tractors too, but not as good with the plough. But like everybody, he was brought up with horses.
Yeah.
And that was, they had to be. Had to be with horses. Yeah.
And so, did he raise horses himself, his own horses?
Yeah, they had horse teams and that, yeah. And light horses too, for stock work and that type of thing, yeah.
Right. Of course, horses were very important.
Oh, well, yeah, that's right. But that was a different era.
Yeah.
A far different era. And a lot of their time was spent growing crop basically to feed the horses.
Yeah.
And when they used to be working the land, I've heard father and uncle say they'd be up feeding them at 4 o'clock with a lantern, getting them ready for work. Imagine doing that today.
Well, you wouldn't stay up late watching TV the night before, would you?
No.
You've always been on the farm?
Well, yes. I actually started to become a school teacher.
Did you?
And I was training.
Is it because of your mother or what?
I wanted to be a school teacher. But I gave it up when my father suddenly died. So that's why.
It's that imperative for the son to take over the farm, huh?
Well, not necessarily. I always wanted to be a school teacher, and I was training. But anyway,
So circumstances intervened.
yeah, so I gave it up on the farm.
So now, around this area, you don't have very many neighbours, but I'm assuming that before there were more people that lived around there.
Yes, yes, it hasn't altered that much,
No,
really.
yeah.
Probably there would have been a few more, but not in my time. To be honest, it hasn't altered that much.
What about people like Denise told me, Tom Walker and the Goers and people like that?
Oh, well, of course, that's long, long before my
Long time.
But I can remember Tom Walker.
Yeah.
He was a retired bank manager who lived in a little property up the back of our place.
Why didn't bank managers get paid very much?
Well, I don't know. I can barely remember him. But he was a lovely old man, a short, stocky man, with a lovely bushy beard, and he used to give me a gentle tickle with his walking stick. He lived a pretty hermit, rough life up there, and a story I've heard was when it came to bathing, he had a well on the property with a windlass, and he used to wind the water up with the windlass and have 2 kerosene tins open. Now, your younger generation mightn't have seen a kerosene tin, but years ago, they were a bit like our 20-litre plastic containers today. But people cut the top out and they were used for all sorts of things, storage things. You probably wouldn't even find one today. But he had the 2 tins with the tops cut out, and he'd fill each one with water and strip off and put a leg in each tin, and that was the way he bathed.
So he had clean feet anyway.
Yes. But that's a story I can tell you about him. But he was a lovely old man.
Though, he must have had short feet to get him in that tin.
I suppose, I don't know.
They're square, weren't they?
Yeah, they were square. Yeah, square. But they stood fairly, a bit higher than our modern day 20-litre tin, but that's a story I can remember. I know he, as he got older, I dare say it was too, he didn't have a car or anything like that, of course. As he got older, I dare say it was too far for him to walk to the post office for his mail. We used to get his mail for him, and he used to come down and get it.
Did you go and collect it?
Yeah.
Up in Ramogi?
Yeah, the post office just up the road.
Yeah. Did many people have cars?
Yes, most did. Even then.
Can you remember the first car you saw?
We got? Oh, no, we had cars long before that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Even before you were a kid?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I remember the first car we had was a Essex. And then the Chev and so on, and then a series of Polands. But with the old cars, you guys are too young to remember, they had a running board.
Oh, I remember it. I'm not that much younger than you.
And there were no indicators or anything like that. And on the windows, you couldn't wind the windows down, but they used to call them tourers. And the window consisted of permanent perspex, so to speak, and there was a flap. And when you wanted to turn right, you poked your arm out parallel to the ground. And when you wanted to stop, you put it out in your hand.
Down.
No, up.
Oh, up.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I can remember our first, I can just remember it was in Essex. It went fairly slow, but, and then there was a couple of Chevs and then a series of Hollands, yeah. But the tourer cars, and they always had a running board. They was fairly high off the ground,
Oh, yeah.
and you stepped up on the running board and then into the car.
Right. And what was the roads like?
Terrible. The road out here is a main road now, has been for a number of years, controlled by the Vic Roads. But in those days it was just a shire road, and well, it resembled more of a dry riverbed with big rocks as big as your head and that.
And what about old mine shafts and stuff?
No, mine shafts either. I can remember, no, it was just a relatively narrow track. And there used to be, up here where there's a double culvert at the creek, there used to be a wooden bridge. High up off the ground, I used to be able to ride my bike under it.
Yeah.
And they formed the road up in the early 60s, and it was sealed. It was actually sealed in 1964.
Is that right? That late?
But it was, the first bitumen road in Mumudgee.
Is that right?
Along here. Yeah.
How about the one to Everton? Was it sealed?
Well, the Great Alpine Road, or Ovens Highway as they called it, I can remember a section there near Dobson's entrance to the overhead bridge, which was just gravel.
Huh?
That was only sealed in the mid to late 50s.
Oh. Well, there you go.
In fact, that road there was changed. It came more over this way. They put in, altered the line of the road there in about the early 50s.
Yeah, well, I know that this road's not in the original place because Colin and I went along in his property and he showed me where a couple of bridges had been across gullies there that were on the original road, and they were far away from this one. They were right into his property.
Well, legend has it that the road that comes down the Buckland Gap was in the wrong spot too. They were going to change it, but the landowner didn't want it, so he sneaked down one night and changed the pegs. And it was half done before they realised. They were going to take out several bends in the road. Won't mention names, of course.
Okay.
No.
Okay.